In this video, we're counting down 40 scenes from around the world that show what urban hell on earth really looks like. I'm your host, Curtis. If you saw this giant crater in the middle of a town, you'd assume something was very wrong. But this is not a meteor strike. This is the Mine, one of the largest excavated holes on Earth, sitting beside the Siberian town of Mirny. The town exists because of diamonds, like literally. Mirny was built around the discovery of massive diamond deposits, and the economy still depends heavily on mining. The mine itself is staggering, over 525 meters deep and about 1.2 kilometers wide. And while diamonds sound glamorous, living here is anything but. It's remote, brutally cold, and winter temperatures can drop below negative 40 degrees Celsius. Still, despite the harsh conditions, Mirny remains a major hub in Russia's diamond industry. Near St. Petersburg, in a place called Godrovo, there's a building so massive it feels less like an apartment and more like a contained civilization. Locals call it the human anthill, and the name is not subtle. Finished in 2015, it contains 3,708 apartments, rises 25 floors high, and has 35 separate entrances. More than 18,000 people live inside, making it one of the most densely populated residential buildings on the planet. And it isn't just housing. On the ground floor, you'll find shops, cafes, a post office, salons, and even a private kindergarten. The appeal is obvious. Everything is convenient, and the place has its own community vibe. But at that scale, it also feels like society stacked vertically and sealed shut. This is the suburban version of deja vu. Rows and rows of identical single-story brick houses stretches out like someone cloned one home and spammed it across the map. Every roof line, every driveway, every front yard, same template, different address. Neighborhoods like this are often designed to keep housing more affordable, especially compared to city centers. But the trade-off is the vibe. Some people just see it as peaceful and practical, while others call it monotonous and lifeless. Like living inside a copy and paste loop. And it's not a Texas-only thing. You'll find the same patterns in places like Las Vegas and in countless other US metro cities. This is the kind of traffic that makes you rethink every decision you've ever made, including leaving your house. In August 2010 near Beijing, China, a traffic jam grew into a full-blown event. It lasted around 12 days and stretched over 100 kilometers. Cars and trucks barely crawled forward inch by inch, day after day. The cause was a brutal combo: construction bottlenecks and a flood of vehicles overwhelming the roadway. Some drivers were trapped for hours, others for days. And of course, opportunists showed up selling food and water at inflated prices. Traffic nightmares happen everywhere, like we know that, but this one was legendary. And honestly, if you've ever driven in Los Angeles during Thanksgiving, you've seen the budget version of this every year. But don't worry, someone will still suggest adding one more lane is like a magical spell. This looks like a normal neighborhood until you realize it's sitting on top of a giant shopping mall. In Zhezhou, China, 4 house-like structures were built directly on the top of a roof of an 8-story mall. They even have gardens and look like regular homes, just placed in the sky like a weird Sims project. They've got plumbing and electricity, but they aren't used as family homes. Instead, they function as offices for mall staff. And part of the reason strange rooftop designs pop up in some Chinese cities is policy. Certain buildings under 12 stories are expected to incorporate green rooftops. It's meant to help with air quality and urban heat. But sometimes the result looks less like sustainability and more like architectural trolling. Skyscrapers are supposed to reach upward. This one gave up and decided to go sideways. In Moscow, there's a structure nicknamed the Lying Skyscraper because instead of towering vertically, it stretches horizontally for an absurd distance, around 736 meters long. That's roughly the length of 7 football fields lined up. It's packed with offices and shops and was designed to maximize space in a dense city. But there's a downside to buildings that behave like endless corridors. They kind of feel cold, confusing, and claustrophobic. Imagine working somewhere that just feels like a never-ending hallway that you can't escape. This photo looks like someone decided to eat lunch in the middle of a depressing industrial apocalypse. It was taken in Charleroi, Belgium, a place that sometimes is branded as one of the ugliest cities in the world. The landscape is heavy with factories, smokestacks, gray skies, and the kind of concrete scenery that drains your soul. But here's the rub. People still live here. They still have families. They still find joy. In this image, a family sets up a picnic beside the ruins of industry. Proof that humans can adapt to almost anything, even if the environment looks like it was designed to lower your serotonin. This building is a visual headache. This is in the Labua Hotel in Thailand, and the design is so repetitive and tightly packed that it looks like the architect got stuck on duplicate. The balconies and windows are crammed into a pattern that feels almost claustrophobic just to look at. From certain angles, it's not as bad, right? But head on, it's the kind of structure that makes your brain itch. And the funny part, it's actually a famous hotel, rated 5 stars, and people actually love staying there. So apparently you can be an architectural migraine and still be luxury. Somewhere in China, you can casually stumble into Paris, minus the French part. Tiananmen was built on a Paris-inspired city, complete with an Eiffel Tower look-alike and streets lined with European-style architecture. Construction began in 2007, but for years the place felt empty and eerie. In 2013, only around 2,000 people were living there, and it earned the label Ghost Town. But the story didn't end there. By 2017, just 4 years later, the population had grown to around 30,000. It's still quieter than many, Chinese cities, but it's no longer just a weird replica collecting dust. Belgrade is Serbia's capital, and in parts of the city, the architecture feels like it was designed to crush optimism. One piece of urban art depicts buildings as giant teeth devouring trees, a blunt metaphor for cities consuming nature. In New Belgrade especially, large gray blocks dominate the landscape, many built during the socialist era. Some people see this as practical, like this style. Others see it as bleak and sterile, like living inside a concrete spreadsheet. And it isn't just unique. Many cities across Eastern Europe and the Balkans share a similar visual identity, heavy, gray, and repetitive. Hong Kong builds upwards because it has to. Limited land forces the city into the sky. More than 7.5 million people live here and work here in this vertical maze, surrounded by over 7,800 high-rise buildings. The skyline is iconic, but the reality at street level can be harsh. For some residents, housing means tiny, cramped cage homes, small spaces that feel more like storage units than living rooms. When land is scarce and the demand is relentless, the city becomes a machine that compresses human life into smaller and smaller boxes. This is what small looks like in China, because the scale is different over there. The city is called Songshan, and it has more than 250,000 people. Rows of similar apartment blocks and dense housing stretch outward in patterns that feel endless. From above, it looks like a grid built for efficiency rather than beauty. From the ground, it can feel like concrete and steel swallowing the horizon. And the question always hits the same. Would you want to live somewhere like this? New York City is one of the most famous cities on earth, probably the most famous, and it's been romanticized in movies, music, and pop culture for decades. But living here is not a glamorous montage for everyone. The pace is relentless, the streets are loud, and the air can be grimy for constant traffic and pollution. In many areas, trash piles up, and rats have basically become unpaid residents. Still, New York has this strange magnetic energy. People tolerate the chaos because the city feels alive. like it's always moving, always daring you to keep up. This is Vorkuta, Russia, the coldest city in Europe. Winter temperatures here can drop to around negative 52 degrees Celsius, that's the kind of cold that makes the word cold feel inadequate. Many residents have left over the years because surviving here is simply brutal. Buildings sit abandoned, coated in ice and snow, creating a frozen ghost city atmosphere. Vorkuta has a dark history too. Parts of it were built by prisoners during a harsh era. The extreme cold accelerates decay, damages infrastructure, and turns everyday life into a constant fight against nature. Duisburg used to be a steel powerhouse. Factories, smokestacks, and heavy industry defined the city for decades. But when steel operations shut down in the mid-80s, Duisburg took a hit, economically and socially. Some parts of the city have worked hard to reinvent themselves, including transforming an old Thyssen steel factory site into a massive public park that's now a popular destination. In areas like Rohrort, long-term environmental plans aim to reduce pollution and improve air quality. But not everything is fixed. One notorious tower called Weber Ries has become a symbol of decline, seen by many as unsafe and unwanted, with calls for demolition growing louder. Duisburg is trying to change, but the scars of industry don't vanish quickly. This is Sao Paulo, and the contrast is so sharp it feels unreal. Luxury buildings towering right beside crowded slums. It's like two worlds stacked next to each other, right? Separated by money and luck. The wealth gap is one of the Brazil's biggest struggles, and fast urban growth only makes it more visible. The city is packed with cars, people, and buildings, and infrastructure often can't keep pace. Traffic chokes intersections, pollution hangs in the air, and daily life becomes harder for everyone. And in places like Rio de Janeiro, favelas such as Rocinha shows a very different version of urban density. Homes built together very tightly, narrow pathways, limited clean water, and inadequate sanitation. You can even see exposed wiring and tangled water pipes, creating constant hazards. It's difficult, it's stressful, but people keep building lives in these conditions because the alternative is often worse. This is Samara, Russia, where modern housing complexes have been built that some people describe it as aggressively inhuman. One complex has been labeled Tough Springs, and locals mock it as Samara luxury because it's marketed as upscale while looking cold and bleak. There's even a church nearby that some resident says feels out of place, almost like a visual joke. In St. Petersburg, similar comparisons get made to housing developments like Northern Valley. The architecture feels sleek and modern, yes, but often strangely sterile, like humans were an afterthought in the design process. Number 18, Cairo, Egypt. Cairo is massive, historic, and packed with people. And when a city gets this crowded, space becomes a constant fight. Part of the modern landscape feels like a maze of tightly packed buildings in the same dusty, sandy palette. It can feel overwhelming, like the city is pressing in from all sides. Because so many people live far from the core and congestion is insane, planners built New Cairo to relieve pressure and create more breathing room. Cairo is one of the world's greatest historic cities, but modern density can make daily life feel exhausting. Pater is a huge neighborhood in Caracas, and it's one of those places where the layout itself tells you survival's hard. Homes are cramped, stacked, and built so close together that some people literally use a neighbor's roof as their floor. Basic services are often missing. No reliable sewers, limited running water, unstable electricity. Some residents steal power from streetlights. Trash piles up due to inconsistent garbage collection, and pests thrive in the mess. The streets are steep and narrow, making transportation difficult, and crime is a major concern, especially at night. But even here, there are signs of resilience. People organize cleanups, create murals and art, and work together to improve what they can in a place that does not make it easy. Lagos is one of the largest cities on Earth, with around 17 million people, and is still growing fast, roughly 3.5% per year. That kind of growth creates a pressure cooker. Crowding intensifies, slums expand, and basic services struggle to keep up. Clean water becomes harder to access, sanitation falls behind, and traffic becomes a daily battle. Urban expansion also pushes outward into natural habitats, creating ecological stress on top of human stress. There are efforts to manage growth, but the scale of the challenge is enormous, right? Lagos is a city moving on at full speed, sometimes faster than it can handle. This is a busy, loud, and thick city with traffic. And when the air is polluted, the city doesn't just feel crowded, it feels heavy. Smog and vehicle emissions make breathing harder, and congestion creates constant delays and noise. During rainy season, flooding becomes a major problem because drainage systems can't always handle the water. As the city expands, lakes and parks shrink or vanish as new buildings take their place. People are trying to improve conditions, but it's a tough fight. Pollution, traffic, flooding, and disappearing green space, all feeding into the same cycle. At first glance, you might think this is Russia, but it's actually in the suburbs of Paris, and it looks like someone designed housing using Tetris pieces. The geometry is sharp, repetitive, and packed tightly to maximize space. People choose neighborhoods like this because they can be more affordable while still being within reach of Paris. But density comes with trade-offs. In some areas, buildings sit wedged between a busy boulevard and rail lines, creating a constant soundtrack of traffic and trains. Rent can start around 800 euros a month if you qualify, and the whole scene becomes a reminder that in high-demand cities, every inch gets used, whether it's comfortable or not. Naples, Italy took an approach that feels like a cruel joke. They built highways directly above existing neighborhoods. Imagine living under an elevated roadway. Like, noise never stops. Sunlight becomes limited because the structure blocks the sky. Your view is concrete shadows and the underside of traffic. Locals have criticized it heavily, arguing that it damages the city's beauty and harms quality of life. And from certain angles, especially from nearby buildings or hotels, it can look like something out of a disaster movie. Sprawling roads cutting through aging urban fabric like a scar. This is Chongqing, a city so complex, it feels like it's built in multiple dimensions at once. It's China's largest municipality by urban population, with around 23 million people. And the infrastructure is wild. Fuel stations on rooftops, trains passing through residential buildings, multi-story restaurants floating on the river. People call it a 5D city because the elevation changes are so intense you can't always tell what floor you're on. Elevated roads run above homes, and massive bridges carry multiple lanes of traffic plus train tracks. At night, bright lights and constant movement disturb the peace for people living close to the infrastructure. Some residents even live beside twisted spiral roads that squeeze neighborhoods into cramped corners. It's impressive and also a little bit dystopian. This looks like the kind of place you get lost in and never escape. Nad Al Sheba 3 in Dubai is a sea of identical villas, stretching so far it looks like the city planner's copy and paste keys got stuck. Rows upon rows of the same houses create a maze effect. It's quiet and orderly, sure, but good luck finding your own home without GPS. The interiors may be fine, but don't expect spacious backyards. The vibe is less neighborhood and more suburban simulation. Finally, trees, except not really. In Al Qasim, Saudi Arabia, those artificial trees were installed because water is scarce and real trees are harder to maintain. But plenty of people hated them because fake trees don't do what real trees are supposed to do. clean the air, provide shade, cool the area, and support wildlife. Critics argue it'd be better to plant real drought-resistant trees instead. This is what happens when cities try to add nature as decoration rather than an actual living system. At first glance, this looks like two separate photos, but it's one location, Tembisa, South Africa, where wealth and poverty sit right beside each other like they're forced roommates. On one side, a mall, a library, a swimming pool, signs of infrastructure and investment. On the other, dense, cramped housing with little privacy and fewer services. The buffer zone between them is a cemetery, which is darkly poetic. Inequality ends there, because everyone ends up the same. Similar contrasts exist in Johannesburg too, where fences, often electric, seem to mark the boundaries of safety and status. Tokyo isn't just big, it's intensely dense. More than 14 million people live and work in Japan's capital, and roughly 6,200 people per square kilometer. Space is limited, so buildings rise higher and stand closer together. Street fills with people and like vehicles, right? And daily life can feel like constant motion. Some residents find it stressful and suffocating. Others love it because the city is endlessly alive, packed with energy, convenience, and opportunity. Tokyo is the ultimate example of a city that never fully stops breathing. These mansions were built for the rich, big empty symbols of money and ambition. But near Xinyang, China, they've been abandoned for more than a decade. No residents, no luxury, just rows of decaying oversized homes sitting in silence. Over time, farmers began using the land around them. Crops began growing where manicured lawns were supposed to be. Nature is slowly reclaiming what real estate tried to dominate. It's a reminder that when projects collapse, the earth doesn't care, it just moves back in. This image is a brutal example of what air pollution does to a city and to the people forced to breathe it. India contains 21 of the world's 30 most polluted cities, and New Delhi has become a symbol of that crisis. In 2019, New Delhi's PM 2.5 level was recorded at 110.2, about 9 times higher than the level considered healthy by the US EPA. In November 2019, some parts of the city report saw air quality index levels above 800, well beyond hazardous. A major driver is rice stubble burning each October, and geography makes it worse. The Himalayas trap pollution, and the winds can push smog back into the city like a lid closing. The terrifying part is how normal it becomes. People live their entire day-to-day lives inside an environmental disaster. This is one of Russia's most polluted cities, and it has the health statistics to prove it. Reports claim only about 28% of the children here are born fully healthy. The Ural River divides the city, with one side considered Europe and the other Asia, but the pollution doesn't respect geography. In the 1930s, a major steel plant was built here, producing up to 7.5 tons of steel, critical during World War II. But the industrial output came with a toxic cost: waste, chemical releases, and widespread environmental damage. One steel worker reportedly claimed filtering devices weren't even working properly. When industry runs unchecked, the city becomes the sacrifice. In Ferenteri, a poor district in Bucharest, and it's shocking because it's in the European Union. Many apartments are squatted, and some buildings lack reliable electricity. Streets are littered with garbage, and infrastructure feels neglected. It's the kind of place that makes you realize how close first world and forgotten can be inside the same city. And honestly, the fix sounds simple on paper. Just clean up trash, add trees, invest in basic services, but reality is harsher. Neglect piles up in the same way garbage does, slowly until it becomes normal. People live here because they work nearby and need cheaper housing. Buildings are older, packed close together, and the streets are narrow and busy with food stalls, shops, and informal businesses. Many buildings are owned by local landlords, but residences are often migrant workers. Governments frequently plan to clear these areas eventually and replace them with more organized, modern city blocks. From above, it looks chaotic, but on the ground, it can actually feel surprisingly lively and, in some cases, even cleaner than you would expect. These are often called urban villages, neighborhoods that function like small towns trapped inside a modern city. Still, it's the kind of maze where you'd hate to be a delivery driver. This image looks grim, but it's also weirdly powerful. Kids are playing basketball near the John E. Amos coal-fired power plant in Polka, West Virginia. The plant looms in the background like something out of a dystopian cartoon. Honestly, it resembles the power plant from The Simpsons. But the real issue is what the coal burning does, locally and globally. Living near a coal plant almost guarantees poor air quality. The narration here claims coal plants emit even more radiation than nuclear plants, and that nuclear plants mostly release water vapor. It also argues coal is essentially a recipe for lung disease and cancer, and jokes that if you live near a coal plant, you should move closer to an atomic one. And meanwhile, the kid in the photo still plays solid defense. This is one picture, but it tells a full story. On one side, wealth, development, and modern towers. On the other, slums where people work, entire districts producing textiles and knockoffs of luxury brands. The irony is brutal. Labor here is cheap because desperation is high, and the work can feed industries worth millions annually while the worker remains dirt poor. Many slum areas are slowly being cleared and redeveloped, but clearing doesn't automatically mean improving lives. Right now, life is hard, but at least the area has grown some greenery and a river, small things that should matter still when everything else feels compressed. At first glance, this looks like a Minecraft world. Huge housing clusters stretch among the landscape in patterns so repetitive they feel manufactured. This style of development is common across China, dense, uniform, and massive. But there's a surprising upside here: space. There's enough room between buildings for sunlight to reach windows, and the design can actually be efficient for housing massive populations. If the ground level includes more parks, trees, and small neighborhood businesses, it could feel far more human. The bones of the design aren't automatically evil. It's what you do with the space around it that determines whether it feels livable or dystopian. Another place where wealth and poverty exist so close together it feels like an insult. This is Do Plateau, a well-off area with paved roads and a clean grid layout. But then the grid fades, roads stop, infrastructure ends, and the slum begins immediately after. It's jarring to see luxury homes and condos sitting right above communities living in poverty. The contrast is not subtle. It's like the city is drawing a hard line and saying, this side matters, this side doesn't. At first glance, this looks like a maze designed specifically to make you hate your neighbors. The houses are arranged in winding patterns with privacy in mind. People here clearly value personal space, even if the layout feels confusing. Honestly, the scene wouldn't be as bad looking if there were more trees and greenery. And compared to harsh security measures like barbed wire fences, this kind of setup is almost peaceful. Everyone wants their own patch of privacy, and this is one of the cleaner versions of that idea. Unless your neighbor owns a trampoline, then privacy is a myth. El Alto and La Paz sit above 4,000 meters in elevation, and the altitude changes everything. The first thing you notice is what's missing: trees. The landscape is dominated by unfinished red brick buildings with exposed metal rods sticking up. because many owners leave homes unfinished to avoid paying taxes. It looks rough, but the narrative claims is that it's actually considered safe to walk around. The bigger problem is the altitude itself. Even simple walking can leave you exhausted because the air is thinner and puts your body in a position where it has to work harder. It is a city where the environment quietly humbles you every day. This looks like a medieval fantasy village until you realize it's a modern financial disaster. Burj Al Babas in Turkey is filled with empty castle-like homes, over 500 of them. It was supposed to be a luxury development, a rich person's dream. But the project collapsed when money ran out. Now it's a ghost town of identical mini castles, sitting unfinished and abandoned. It's what happens when ambition outruns reality. A fairy tale design turned into a monument of failure. Thanks for watching. I'm Curtis. See you next time.